Hello, everyone. Charles Watts here. Welcome back to Inside Arsenal. It's Saturday. It's the weekend. I hope you're all having a very good start to that weekend, whether you're watching or listening to this around the world. And what a huge, huge weekend it is. Manchester City versus Arsenal, the first of the two league meetings between what you would probably expect, although it's pretty early to say it, but you probably expect to be the Premier League's top two this season. Of course, they've fought it out over the last couple of years. City, unfortunately, coming out on top. Can Arsenal go to the Etihad and get a result this weekend? Mikel Arteta has been speaking about that game ahead of the game. We'll look at what Mikel's been saying. Didn't have a press conference, a normal sort of press conference yesterday that he would have done normally because of the travel coming back from Italy. So just had a couple of the sort of broadcast media went down to Colney when Arsenal returned, met him, and then those quotes were sort of fired out to the different media organizations around the country. So it wasn't the usual type of press conference, but we'll look at what he had to say anyway. We'll look at what some of you guys have been saying about what you think he should do potentially for this game. We'll look at the Martinelli debate that seems to be raging after the game in Italy on Thursday night as well, and have a look at a little bit of the latest team news. So let's get going. And Mikel's setting out, I think, from what he said in his press conference yesterday and also what he said after the game in Italy on Thursday night, I think it's pretty obvious he's been trying to send out a bit of a message here to his players, the wider public, as well, ahead of the game against City. There's been lots of talk, hasn't there? Because of those comments Rodri made at the end of last season, saying that when Arsenal went to the Etihad, he didn't think they were trying to win, and saying that City would never do that. Personally, I thought those comments were rubbish. Anyway, Arsenal was absolutely trying to win at Man City, but they were also trying not to lose. And I look at that result, and I will die on the hill of people saying that's why Arsenal didn't win the league, because they didn't go and win at the Etihad, which is just frankly ridiculous. They didn't win the league last season because they lost home and away to West Ham, because they took 1 point from, not West Ham, home and away to Aston Villa, because they took 1 point from Fulham because they lost 3-0 against West Ham. That's why they didn't win the league last season. It wasn't because they went to the Etihad when they were already ahead of Man City and get a really, really good 0-0 draw. So I don't agree with what Rodri had to say anyway, but those comments have certainly created a bit of narrative up around today's game, and kind of following on from the Thursday night game as well, where Arsenal didn't look like they were absolutely determined to win that game in Italy. Looked like they were quite happy with a 0-0 draw. Whether that was by design or just by the terrible performance, who knows? Personally, I think it was through the latter, and it was just a terrible performance. It wasn't that they went there and just wanted a 0-0 draw. I just think they weren't good enough on the night to find a way to win that game. Also, they are missing some key players in midfield, which is certainly stifling their creativity a bit. But Mikel's obviously sent out a very powerful message, I think, ahead of the game. He didn't want to use the excuses either of the whole City having an extra day and not having to travel abroad and all that sort of stuff. He said, look, we wanted the same as them, but we're not getting it. So we have to adapt to make the most of the time that we have today and tomorrow and on the morning of the match to prepare in the best way to go there and win the game. Obviously saying win the game there. On how tough this week has been, and it has been an incredibly tough week for Arsenal. Going to Spurs, such an emotionally and mentally draining game anyway, but having done that on the back of the awful news about Martin Odegaard, then having to travel to Italy to play a really difficult team in Atalanta, then coming back, having no rest time and having to prepare for Manchester City. It's a really difficult week for the players, for the coaching staff, for the manager and everyone. And when asked how busy he's been, he said, yeah, we've been preparing for it though since pre-season. Obviously, we knew the schedule and we knew that it was extremely rare to play in these conditions with 3 massive away games in 6 days, but it is what it is. So we've prepared for that, both physically, mentally, and tactically. We're making sure that everyone is ready for it because we're going to need them, especially with the injuries that we had from the international break. He was then asked about the incredible record that Arsenal have got away from home in the Premier League in 2024. Obviously, it's played 11, won 10, scored 30, conceded 3, never been behind once in that time. He said, look, it's a really competitive one, but now we have to go to the home of the champions, the team that I think in Premier League history has been the most consistent ever, not only in terms of results, but in terms of dominance and consistent top performances. This is the challenge. We have to go there and prove that, again, we've made another step and that we can compete. So certainly sending out a bit of a message there, I think, to his players ahead of game on Sunday. Just on a little bit more that he said on Thursday night after the game, he was asked about the whole are you going to try and win at Manchester City, or is a draw a good result? And he said, look, for sure, we will prepare to try and win, just like we did against Atlanta. That's been the message already. In order to do that, there are going to have to be things that we're going to have to do much better than we did against Atalanta. There are some things that we did exceptionally well against Atalanta, and we're going to have to do them again. By that, he obviously means defend as well as they did, because we all know that we need a big performance to beat them. Now, all this talk, and it's kind of similar to what I said earlier on, but all this talk that Arsenal might not want to win is utter rubbish. Now, I don't know Mikel Arteta brilliantly well, but in my kind of limited knowledge of Mikel, in terms of being around him, speaking to him, knowing what he's about, speaking to people who work very, very closely with him, talk about what he's about. He is all about winning. It is the most central thing about anything he does, is to win, is to be number one, is to be the best. So the notion that Arsenal would not want to go to Man City and win is just frankly ridiculous. But having said that, a draw is not a terrible result. Like, as I said, last year's 0-0 draw at City was a decent result for Arsenal. It was a good result. They took 4 points. If you take 4 points off Man City every season, you win your home game and draw away from home. That is a very, very good return against Manchester City. But Arteta's message in this week to all of his players is about going there and winning and finding a way to win. To do that, they're going to have to do what they are very good at, just like Mikel said in that quote I read out a minute ago, and that is defend your penalty area absolutely brilliantly. Defend it, throw yourself in front of the ball, go double up on people, make saves when you need to, make last-ditch tackles when you need to, press really well. You're going to have to do all of that, and you're going to have to do it for 95, 96, 97 minutes, whatever it is, because you take your eye off the ball for 1 minute against Man City, you're a goal behind. It's as simple as that. You go a goal behind, you're going to really, really struggle at the Etihad. So Arsenal are going to have to do what they've done for a long, long time in this incredible away record really well, and that is stay in the game, do not fall behind, protect your goal. And we know that Arsenal are the best side in Europe, in my opinion, but certainly in the Premier League at doing that. But this is the ultimate test. They passed it really well last season in that 0-0 draw. Haaland barely had a sniff, and they really sort of kept Man City at arm's length. That's what they're going to have to do again. That's a challenge, and that's what Mikel Arteta would have told his players. But then what you do need to do, and what you need to do a lot, lot better than you did at Atalanta on Thursday night, is be a threat on the counter-attack when you do get the ball. And you're not going to have the ball that much. That's plain and simple. Man City are going to dominate territory. They're going to dominate possession. It's just what they do. What you then need to do is, when you do get the ball, you have to use it well. You have to keep it, which Arsenal were terrible at against Atalanta. It was 2 passes and then bang, the ball was given away. It was turned over. You cannot do that against Man City. If you do, you're going to lose, plain and simple. You can't just present them with the ball. And that's what Arteta would have been telling his players from the moment that Atalanta game finished, was you have to protect the ball when you have it, and you have to be a threat. You can't let Man City be comfortable and know that they're not really going to be worried when you do get the ball. So they have to look more of a threat when they're going forward together. They have to attack together, and they have to attack with threat. And that's the only way they're going to beat Man City at the weekend, 100% in my mind. Team news-wise, ahead of the game, Mikel was asked about if there's any fresh injuries after the Atlanta. He said, not really. Straight after the Atalanta match, we needed to recover, sleep, eat well, and everyone is looking forward now to City. We know what it means. We know what we're fighting for, and it's a great opportunity for this team to show what they're capable of. On Martin Odegaard, he said, look, we need to see the development in the next week or so, how the ankle reacts, first of all, and then the staff will give me an update on the time frame and how long he will be out for. Kevin De Bruyne is obviously a big talking point. While Odegaard dominates it at Arsenal, De Bruyne is a big talking point. He came off in their 0-0 home draw against Inter Milan. City didn't win in the Champions League, and they were at home. And De Bruyne came off in that game at half-time, replaced by Phil Foden, of course. And he is a doubt for this game, but Pep has been speaking about it. And, whether this is mind games or what, is he doing kind of like Arteta did with Odegaard ahead of the Tottenham game? He didn't rule him out. He said he felt a little bit better today. This is obviously from yesterday, so he means Friday. He feels a little bit better, but we have not yet had training, and we will see. He could be involved. Arteta was asked about whether it would be a boost to not have De Bruyne in the Manchester City team, and he said no, because they have the option, if he doesn't play, of Gundogan, Bernardo, Phil Foden, Kovacic. They're all world-class players. We have a few missing as well, and we have to adapt. But certainly those kinds of teams don't rely on one individual, which is extremely important for them. I think that's the thing with Arsenal and Odegaard. If City to have more like-for-like replacements in their team for De Bruyne, De Bruyne type player, in the players Mikel Arteta has just mentioned there, real sort of creative players who can step into the void left by De Bruyne if he is out. But, the City will be a weaker team without De Bruyne. There's no doubt about it. You look at the first half of last season when he missed a large chunk of that season. They weren't great. They struggled. They lost games. They lost games that you expected them to win. They drew games that you expected them to win. So, he is a miss. Once he came back into the team, City were brilliant, and they went on that amazing run and managed to just pip Arsenal to the post in the second half of last season. But when he wasn't in it, they did struggle a little bit to maintain their usually high standards. But they still have players who can come in and fill the void a little bit better, I think, than Arsenal do when it comes to Martin Odegaard not being in the team. And that's a challenge that Arsenal now face over the next 6 weeks, 8 weeks, whatever it is, with Martin Odegaard, is finding a way to bring that creativity to the team in the absence of the skipper. And not just the creativity, I think just the being able to press and lead the press and everything like that. I think Kai Havertz is the closest thing Arsenal have got to that. But we'll talk about that in a minute. I'm really against the idea of Havertz playing in midfield. I have to say, I just think Arsenal are better with him up front. And that was my big takeaway from the Thursday night game in Atalanta, is I think Arsenal need to find a way that doesn't involve Havertz coming into midfield. He can do that job well, but I just really want to see him playing as a forward on Sunday, I have to admit. The Martinelli-Trossard debate has obviously been raging, as I said, since. So not so much Trossard, just the Martinelli debate has just been raging, but it raises a question of what do you do with Martinelli on Sunday. Personally, I think Martinelli plays, I have to say. I think his ability to be able to get in behind is something that Mikel Arteta is going to want to use against Man City. And for all of the sort of focus on the missed chances against Atalanta and maybe the missed chance against Tottenham, he's still the one player in this Arsenal team who is getting the opportunities at the moment. When you look at the last 2 games against Tottenham, Martinelli was the person who provided the chance for Kai Havertz with his run down the left and his cross. He was the one who had the chance when he got through and put the shot straight at Vicario. Against Atalanta, he was a player in open play who created a chance for himself in the first half and in the second half. Yes, he didn't take them, and that he has to sort that out. I think it's 16 games now without a goal for Martinelli. You've got to go back to March for his last goal. It's not good enough, he's got to sort that out one way or the other. He needs to, I don't know, whether it is a confidence thing, whatever it is, he needs to find a way just to get his head straight and to be able to give himself a moment to sort of breathe and relax before he takes that final action to get the shot away, because it all does look a little bit rushed at the moment when Martinelli does have the ball at his feet in front of goal. But I do think he needs to play. Look, before I carry on, I'll just bring up a couple of comments from you guys. Aaron says, despite Martinelli's constant dip in form, I think he'll definitely start against City. Will surely play counter-attacking football. Martinelli is the most threatening option we have on the fast counter-attack. His final passes and finishes, certainly a big concern, but we don't have much options left in the squad at the moment. Sterling did score on both games against City last season at Chelsea, which does help us a bit. I get what you're saying about Sterling there, but I've not seen enough from Sterling in his 2 substitute appearances yet to suggest he is de-Chelsea'd enough yet to come into this Arsenal team. I think that's a process that might take another month or so. So I'd be leaving Sterling and having him come off the bench at the moment while he adjusts to life at Arsenal. Craig says, mark my words, Calafiori and Martinelli are going to absolutely cook. The Buccaneering runs of Calafiori are going to give Martinelli the space and time to do his best work and create chaos. Fingers crossed. You are correct there, Craig. But I agree kind of what Aaron's saying there in the way I think Arsenal will play and how they might be able to hurt City. I do think that Martinelli is probably the best weapon Arsenal have for that right now. And I'd be keeping him in this team, especially if, like we spoke about with James Benge yesterday, an extra time, if Rico Lewis is playing over there and he does sort of create that space and leave that space in behind him, I think I'd be going Martinelli personally. And I think I'd probably bring Trossard, as much as I don't actually like Trossard that much in the sort of left 8 role, whatever you want to call it. I think I'd be moving him in there for this one, having Kai Havertz as my central striker and focal point, who you can hit the ball long to if you need, and who can create chaos in the penalty area. Vet Paris is in touch and says, I agree, Jorginho needs to come in for Partey in Odegaard's absence. One of my favourite performances last season was a Liverpool home game. Rice sat at 6 and Jorginho played at 8. It gave us more defensive solidity, and Jorginho played really well in a more advanced role. He did. I think that was a really good Arsenal performance tactically. I thought they were spot on, and that sort of change of Rice playing deeper than Jorginho threw Liverpool out a little bit. And I wouldn't be against this happening at the weekend, I have to admit. And for all their silk, City's midfield isn't insanely athletic. Rice at 6 probably makes it easier for Calafiori to play some part as well. Going forward, he had something really unorthodox, which must be incredibly awkward to defend against. And Nick from India says, for City, I would play Rice and Partey in the double pivot and have Trossard playing behind Havertz. Rice can check those clever runs Rico Lewis makes into midfield and drive forward in transitions, while Trossard can get us out of tight loads that City create in midfield. Or hear me out, I know you hate it, but Jesus on the right and move Saka behind Havertz. What do you think? I wouldn't be moving Saka behind Havertz, I have to say, for this one. But like I said, Trossard playing slightly behind Havertz and sort of switching those two around for this game, I would be in support of. I have to say, I just want Havertz as Arsenal's striker at the moment, especially in this game against City. So yeah, thank you very much, you two, for your comments on that. Denler has also got in touch and he has put his starting 11 as Raya, Timber, Saliba, Gabriel, Calafiori, Jorginho, Rice, Jesus behind Saka, Havertz and Martinelli. And he says, I think White could do with a small rest and having Timber at right back will be unexpected. As the same for having Jesus in the Odegaard type role. Jesus has always been a player that draws players to him and can be quite creative. This could hopefully free up space for the likes of Saka and Havertz. He tends to link up well with Martinelli. All good points there. Could Jesus potentially play in that role? I mean, he can be creative. I think back to the goal that he set up and created for Trossard in the Bayern Munich home game last season, playing almost a little bit behind. Could that work long term? I can't see Arteta trying it, but it could be an option. And he has to find something in the next 6 to 8 weeks that does work. Maybe that is something you could try out, but I'm not sure you'd be trying it for Man City away. I have to admit, thank you very much, everyone, for getting in touch and for your questions. All right. Have a very good Saturday, wherever you're watching or listening to this. I'll be back in the morning. I'm going up to Manchester, so I'm going to be leaving pretty early tomorrow, but I'll try and squeeze in a video before I go, dig my predicted 11 and all those sorts of things. So until then, have a very good weekend, everyone. I will speak to you soon. Bye-bye.